Hello viewers, welcome to Ekamiasacademy. Seeing the image displayed, you can understand if you have your environment basics strong. You can understand what type of ecosystem and what is the point of discussion for today, right? We are going to discuss about corals, right? So corals are the marine ecosystem, very important as part of your UPSC in environment section, and we'll understand what is the context, okay? So you can understand these are the beautiful structures in the marine ecosystem. So we'll understand it further, see this image and next image, what is the difference, right? So we have here, don't like anyone who doesn't know, they'll think this is a one coral color and this is another coral color. But if you know your basics, okay, then you'll understand corals always have to be healthy. So if they have healthy health and all, that you can say they have colors also, good colors. That is why they appear to be in multicolor. But in case if corals health is not good, that means in case if they're not having suitable condition for survival, then what happens is they turn to be white. White means coral bleaching, we call. So what happens if they turn white means almost they're losing their existence. That means they may die also. So the next stage of the coral bleaching is the death of the coral in case if the suitable conditions are not supplied. So what is causing this particular difference is, we'll understand the reasons. And you can see this is what large scale coral bleaching that happened. And that is why we are discussing this particular topic. So according to Nation Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of US. This is an agency of US. They have given a data. That is why we're discussing. They said fourth mass extinction of corals is happening. Okay, that means already three times it happened. When means in 1998, 2010 we have, 2014 we have this mass extinction of corals. But now again we are experiencing for the fourth time. What happens if these corals will extinct or will die means marine ecosystem entirely, okay, not entirely, but almost we'll lose many fishes because the coral fishes and all, they will survive in these corals only. So almost all the marine ecosystem will suffer loss, okay? So then we'll understand what is the basic things about corals. So for this to understand, you need to know what is coral, and we'll understand what is the difference between coral and coral reef, okay? So for thing you understand, corals are nothing but marine invertebrates. What are invertebrates? Invertebrates are those organisms, cold-blooded animals, you can say, which doesn't have any backbone. So that is the marine invertebrate coral. So these are also called polyps. Okay, polyps are marine invertebrates of corals. So then what happens? These polyps will be living in calcium carbonate structures, you can say, or limestone structures, which are called coral reefs. Reefs are nothing but physical structures. Polyps are corals. Okay, so for existence of corals, you need another organism, that is zooxanthellae. So what is this zooxanthellae? Zooxanthellae is the single cell algae. Single cell algae. So this single cell algae is helping the coral, and coral is also helping zooxanthellae. That we call as symbiotic relationship, mean win-win situation for both. How it is a win-win situation means, zooxanthellae being an algae, you know, algae in the marine ecosystem are the primary producers because they prepare the food for themselves and they support the upper organisms in the food chain based on photosynthesis. So they are responsible for photosynthesis in the marine ecosystem. So they generate food. So this food they provide to the corals. What corals will be doing to the zooxanthellae? They will be providing shelter to the zooxanthellae. In this way, it works. So it is becoming a symbiotic relationship and win-win situation for both. Then what is the issue here means, these zooxanthellae, if they're all the time with the algae, then it will be healthy one, like you can see in the first image. But sometimes some conditions are creating this expellation of this zooxanthellae. That means the zooxanthellae will leave the coral. So in that situation, what happens? The coral will be deprived of food and oxygen. So when it is deprived of food and oxygen, it will lose its color and it will become a bleached coral. So this is the second situation. In case of bleached coral also, if you are again able to attract the zooxanthellae, means again if you provide suitable conditions in which the zooxanthellae survives, then again we can restore it to normal, okay? But in case if you are not trying to solve the problem, then it will die. You can see the dead coral, that is the next stage. So here turfing algae or macroalgae, which are most commonly seen in the coral ecosystem. So they will occupy the coral and they'll eat the coral. It will die. In this way, this is happening. So this is what we are discussing. So now this fourth extinction is happening. That is what the point of discussion of this video is. So now, what are the points of discussion? Fourth mass coral bleaching is happening. Why it is in news? What are the differences between coral and coral reef we have seen? We also will look into these details further, and what are the threats? Okay, we also will look into what are the types of corals, then what are the threats that are causing this coral bleaching, or what are the threats to the corals which are resulting in coral bleaching, causes, and findings of this nation oceanic atmospheric administration of US. Then what are the initiatives taken at the global level and initial and the national level also for conservation of corals. Then this forms part of your environment in GS3 in biodiversity section, right? Then what is the context of this video? As I told you, US agency, that is NOAA, so it has released a report that we are experiencing fourth mass coral bleaching event. Okay, what is bleaching? I told you, coral, when zooxanthellae is expelled out of it, it will lose its color because there is no food and oxygen to the coral. So then where did they observe this? Means they have observed this phenomenon in the Australian's Great Barrier Reef, Australia's. So what is this Great Barrier Reef? This is one type of coral reef. Why we are referring, or why they have taken only this reef means this is the largest coral reef in the world. Okay, so almost a majority of, you can say almost one third of the corals are there in the Great Barrier Reef itself. That is why they have conducted a survey, and they have found this data that fourth mass extinction is taking place. Then what are corals and coral reefs? I told you. Corals are nothing but animals, marine invertebrate animals or polyps, which live in symbiotic relationship with zooxanthellae. Symbiotic means win-win situation. Zooxanthellae is getting shelter. In return, it is providing food to the corals. Then this algae is providing food and oxygen. Corals will provide a safe place or habitat to live in. Then coral reefs are calcium carbonate structures or limestone structures formed after these coral animals. After the coral die, okay, they will be depositing in the deep oceans where they will be forming like these things, okay, upon which again new coral polyps will be surviving. Okay, in this way, these are the reefs, coral reefs. These are normally found in tropical climates, but don't think that all the time corals have to be found only in tropical. There are different types of corals that we are going to discuss now. So before that, you need to know favorable conditions of corals for their existence. So first thing is sunlight. As I told you, coral existence is based on zooxanthellae. Zooxanthellae is an algae, I told you. Zooxanthellae and algae. So it requires sunlight. Okay, so because it prepares food based on photosynthesis, and you know, sunlight, without sunlight there is no photosynthesis possible. So sunlight presence is very much important for zooxanthellae, and zooxanthellae survival is very essential for the corals. Then clean and clear water. Why this is very important? Because in case of dirty water or muddy waters, it will make the water opaque to the sunlight. Okay, that is why normally clean and clear water only will allow the sunlight penetration. That is why it is very essential. Then you have warm water temperatures. Normally temperatures between 30 to 20 to 32 degrees centigrade only will be suitable for the corals for their survival. Then salt water. Normally fresh water is not suitable for coral existence because calcium carbonate structures and all, they don't depend on the fresh waters. So normally if you see in coastal areas also, corals will not be found in any estuaries. Estuaries are areas where the river water will join the oceanic water. The place where the river is joining the ocean is called estuary. So in these places, the coastals will not be having their presence. So then abundant plankton. Plankton is nothing but again the zooxanthellae. Phytoplankton is the primary thing, above which you have zooplankton you call. Again, both those two are the types of algae only. So then you have this supply of nutrient. Nutrient supply is also very essential for the coral survival because based on that only they can generate their food and survival. Then shallow waters. What is meaning of the word shallow waters? Normally, as you know, in marine ecosystem, as you proceed or you go deep into the marine ecosystem, their sunlight penetration will be very less or absent completely. That means wherever the sunlight penetration is there, that means in shallow waters, just below the surface of the water, there only you find less presence of corals. That means for sunlight, they will be there only in the shallow waters. Then in India, where do we find corals? Means in these locations: Gulf of Kutch in the Gujarat coast, Lakshadweep, Andaman and Nicobar, Gulf of Mannar and Andaman and Nicobar. So these are the primary places. And in the recent times, they have even found on the Goan coast and Mumbai coast also. Some secondary things you can say. Then we are going to look into types of corals. There are two types of corals based on the location of coral reef and also based on the characteristics of the coral reefs. Okay, so based on location, these three we have: fringing reef, barrier reef, and atolls. We'll understand what are these. Then we have based on characteristics as hard and soft corals. That also we'll see. What is a fringing reef? Fringing reef is nothing but it is attached almost to the coastline only. If there is a coastline, almost they will be very close to the coast only, but small water body will be coming in between, that we call as lagoon. Okay, so you know Sriharikota, where we have Satish Dhawan Space Center, that is also a lagoon, based on lagoon. So fringing reefs are always attached to the coast only, but mostly it's a small lagoon will be separating them. That is fringing reef. Then barrier reef. Now we have seen a Great Barrier Reef in Australia, so this is one kind of barrier reef. So barrier reef are those, again they will be running parallel to the coast but not so close to the coastline. So a deep lagoon will be separating the coast and the barrier reefs. Okay, in this way they are parallel to the coast but not attached like fringing reefs. So this is the second thing. Then you have atolls. Atolls are nothing but circular or ring shaped coral reefs. Circular or ring shaped coral reefs. Okay, so these are atolls. Atolls, remember all these three categories are only volcanic islands. Okay, so volcanic means you know. Volcanic islands means in oceanic basins, if there is eruption of magma and it cools and solidifies later on, it will form like an island. Based on this only, we have these type of reefs, and most commonly, atolls will be present in mid-oceanic ridges. Mid-oceanic ridges, you know, this is a phenomenon of divergent plate boundaries, right? So mid-Atlantic oceanic ridge we have in Atlantic Ocean. In those places, we have these atolls. Then why they are important? Okay, so you have we consider this corals or marine coral ecosystem as the rainforests of the ocean because of the biodiversity they support. Biodiversity means lot of plants you can say, or the fishes or other species, marine species, they will be finding their habitat in the corals only. That is why we call them as rainforests of the ocean, and they protect the coast also right from the sea surges and tsunamis and all. That is why they're very important for coastal protection. Then they're important for carbon sequestration. What is carbon sequestration? Carbon sequestration means atmospheric carbon will be captured. So, or carbon dioxide, if it is very high in the atmosphere, then it will result in global warming. So, to decrease the level of atmospheric carbon dioxide, we'll try to capture this carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store in the form of soil or in the oceans, that we call as carbon sequestration. So these corals also help in carbon sequestration by capturing the atmospheric carbon dioxide and they'll store within themselves. In that way, they are very important. And it is also a source of food because most of the fishes and all, they find their habitat, so they're source of food for source of food. And then you have medicinal properties. They're also very important in medicinal context and they have huge medicinal potential. Then you have biodiversity support. We have seen tourism potential. Okay, so they're colorful and they attract large number of tourists. Scuba diving and all, if you do, then you have this. You can like explore these corals also. Then you have these are considered as backbone of tropical region economies. Just now we have seen one of the condition is 22 to 30 degrees centigrade is ideal for the existence of corals. That means in the tropical regions, if there are good coral reefs present, then through this the economies also are getting benefited. According to a study, almost every year from the global coral reefs, $30 billion of economy is getting generated. Okay, in that way they have huge economic potential. Like they're supporting the fishermen's livelihood, even fishing tourism. All these things will contribute to the economic potential. Then what are the threats to the corals? Overfishing or fishing habits. Okay, excessive human presence in the coastal areas also will hurt the presence of corals. Recreational activities like tourism. Okay, so all these things, if they're not taking into consideration corals, then it will hurt. Then coastal development. If you are violating this CRZ, coastal regulation zones, if you're not following, it will also hurt. Increase in the artificial constructions or pollution also. Pollution means if more and more polluted water gets discharged into the oceanic water also, it hurts the existence of corals. Then climate change. Increase in temperatures is not at all good for the corals. So in that way, climate change also. Ocean acidification. Ocean acidification is a phenomenon where there is more intake of atmospheric carbon dioxide by the oceans. If there is more and more intake, then pH value of the water decrease. If pH value decreases below 7, it is called as acidic. Okay, so then oceans will get acidic in nature. So it is becoming a threat for the corals. Then What is coral bleaching? We have seen coral bleaching is nothing but these threads, whatever we have seen in the previous slide, all those threads are stressful for the coral existence. So if like high temperatures, pollution and other changes, if acidicity and pH value and all, so if these things increase, then zooxanthellae will be expelled. It will leave the corals. So if corals are deprived of this zooxanthellae, then it colors turns white. That is what we call as bleaching. Okay, so that means corals cannot live in this for a very long situation. Then it doesn't necessarily mean the end of the coral. That is what I told you. After bleaching of the corals also, you can, if you are able to provide the necessary conditions, then we can revive the corals. But then if you are not able to, so again, help these corals in the bleached state also, then they will become dead. Okay, as they're important for the home and food of many species, coral bleaching has to be addressed as soon as possible. So then what is the recent finding we have seen? The recent finding said this is going to be the fourth mass coral bleaching event. Already we have seen in 98, 2010 and 2014. Three times mass coral bleaching has led almost, because of these things, almost one third of Great Barrier Reef already lost. Okay, and this mainly observed is in Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, and Indian Ocean, three major oceans where this bleaching event is happening. Okay, then you have preliminary results also are suggesting that 15% of the world's reefs are dying. Okay, so in case if this particular threats will continue as it is, then it will also result in almost 15% of the coral reefs will die in the future, according to the recent data. Then whatever the other things they have found is in the last summer, that is in 2023 summer, in the northern hemisphere, because of huge temperature rise and all, Caribbean islands also they have suffered this worst coral bleaching, and also they found El Nino's presence also has increased the situation. That means El Nino is, where the coast of Peru, they'll have, normally they used to have cold current, Humboldt's current or Peruvian current we call. In case if this cold current is replaced by warm current, okay, then it will change the global climatic patterns. So that means the coast of Peru normally will be very dry, but here, because of replacement of cold current with warm current, there will be huge precipitation and rainfall. So the other coasts of Australia, Indonesia, even India also will experience dry conditions. That is what El Nino is. So this will also exacerbate this particular situation of coral bleaching in the Australian coast. And also, if this increase in temperatures happen and 1.5 degree compared to the pre-industrial levels, if it happens, then it is estimated that almost 90% of corals will be lost. That is what a word of caution they have given. And to minimize this increase in temperatures only, we have this Paris Agreement signed in COP21 in 2015. Do remember these things, right? Then what are the impacts of global warming on the corals? Coral bleaching is taking place. Smothering of corals. Smothering of corals means corals will become very hard and they'll die off. Okay, there won't be any presence of algae. So destruction of corals, it will impact the coral growth, hampers the dispersal of coral larvae. Coral larvae always for its existence, it needs cold conditions. Okay, it should be preserved in very cold conditions. So in case if the global warming increases the temperatures, coral larvae cannot sustain, so that corals also cannot breed. Then death of corals, ocean acidification also happens because of global warming. In this way, these are the main threats because of global warming to the corals. Then what are the initiatives taken at the global level and national level to conserve corals? Means you have global level International Coral Reef Initiative. This is very important initiative launched in 1994 by some countries like Australia, Japan, France, you have USA, like these countries, they have formed this particular initiative so that they contribute money, public investments in the form of public and private, and also that help in conserving the corals. India is also a member of this particular initiative. Now it has almost 45 members as part of this initiative. Okay, then do remember Global Coral Reef Research Development Accelerator platform is there. So the name itself is suggesting research and development in corals. Okay. Then you have Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network. Monitoring means it will always assess how the health of the corals is there, what are the parameters that are contributing to the coral bleaching and all. In this way, they'll monitor. Then you have Global Coral Reef Alliance. This is a non-profit organization formed by different groupings, like you can say voluntary initiative, you can say, where scientists who are involved in interested in conservation, they can join and they can give some input and data based on research Okay, then in scientific management they can do. Then the technology involved in conservation of coral reefs. This is very important. UPSC already have asked a question on biorock technology in 2022. So biorock technology and chiromesh you have. So what are these two things means in cryomesh technology, the larvae of corals, okay, so they will be preserved at very colder temperatures like minus 190 degrees. After this, they will be introduced into the wild, okay. In this way, it is helping in conservation of larvae and we are able to expand the coral reefs. Then what is this biorock technology, which is also called mineral accretion technology, okay. So what is this technology already asked by UPSC is, here we are building this artificial reefs and then we are able to after building this artificial reefs we'll ensure that corals can expand further, okay. Artificial reef construction is used by this biorock technology. Then what are the national initiatives? National Coastal Mission Program, this is mainly aiming at conservation of coastal areas, at the same time coral reefs also. Apart from this, strictly following CRZ guidelines and also these things also will help in conservation of corals, right. Then we also will look into the Great Barrier Reef presence. So as I told you in the beginning, based on the study which is conducted in the Great Barrier Reef region, so we have understood that fourth mass extinction is taking place. So where is this Great Barrier Reef located means in the northeastern coast of Australia, especially in the Queensland. This area is called as Coral Sea because of the presence of Great Barrier Reef. What are the interesting things? Or these are part of the Pacific Ocean in the northeastern coast of Australia. And this is the largest coral reef system in the world. That is what I told you in the beginning. And this is designated as UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1981, and it is a marine protected area. As we have seen in the beginning, I told you based on location we have fringing reef, barrier reef, and atolls, right? Based on characteristics, we have two types of corals: hard coral and soft coral. Okay, so what is this hard coral? Hard coral is having calcium carbonate skeleton structure. That means there is skeleton, hard skeleton structure will be there, which is supporting the coral existence. But in soft corals, there won't be any skeleton structure. Okay, this is a primary difference. And if you see, this particular hard corals are found in shallow waters, not just below the surface, not so deep. And you have the soft corals deep in the ocean. Okay, so you can understand if they're present deep in the ocean, there won't be presentation, any presence of sunlight. In the hard corals, there will be presence of sunlight. That means they depend on the zooxanthellae. Here, there is no dependence on the zooxanthellae. That is the primary difference between hard coral and soft coral. Okay, whatever we find in India, all those are hard corals itself. Now it's time for testing your knowledge. You can see the prelims question given for practice with reference to the black corals. Consider the following statements. Black corals are nothing but soft corals or deep sea corals. Okay, so they are known as deep sea corals. They don't require light for their growth. Black corals do not have any symbiotic algae associated with them. Based on this, answer among the given options in the comment section. Then practice question given for mains is, what are the favorable conditions for the formation of corals? Analyze the impact of global warming on the corals. Based on our discussion, you can answer this, I hope. Okay, so as we have come to the end of the video, today we have discussed about what is the recent context where we are discussing about the corals. We have seen what is the difference between coral reef we have seen, what are the types of corals we have seen, what is the location of coral reefs in India we have seen, and also we have seen the essential conditions for coral survival. We have seen what are the threats to the corals. We have seen the initiatives taken in the global level and the national level for the conservation of coral reefs. This is all with respect to this video. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.